ক্লাসরুম ঘরে নেবে हजुर निरन्तर लाग्दछ हजुर सुनिसकेको छैन सुनिरहेको छु अब निर्विज्ञलाई जस्तो खानु नपर्ने होइन केम खाएर सुत्छ मलाई दाल भात चाहिहाल्छ दाल भात बनाए के भने
Hello everyone, good evening.
हजुर ए त्यो चाइनिजमा को आज
भाइ Hi everyone, I'm Seth.
Hello, Parag.
Hi guys. So today we'll see a synchronous Java script. So everybody please open the VS Code and index.html and app.js setup that we were working on yesterday. Right, then let's do it together. And guys, if you want to ask me something, then let's discuss as well. And my voice is slightly not good today. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please.
I'm having some problem on the GitHub while I try to commit the code.
Okay.
So I'm not able to uh, commit the changes that I did. Maybe if I can share my screen, I can explain.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you
Yeah,
see the
I can
screen?
see it. Yeah.
So I was trying to do assignment, and so the red one is I try to delete all these things, and the green one I try to copy and paste from yours. And when I try to commit these things, and I'm just able to get the old one, not the changes one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you cloned it, right?
Yes, I cloned it from yours and did some changes, and I try to commit it on a different repository, but not the same one.
Okay. Yeah. For that case, actually, when you clone it, my
Yeah.
information will also be cloned. It means my GitHub information, the commit information as well. There will be a file called .git in your VS Code. You need to actually delete that in order to create your own repository. If you go to VS Code,
Yeah.
just type ls-a on your terminal. In your terminal, type ls space hyphen a hyphen and a together. No space, yeah. Hyphen and a together. Okay, just go inside any folder first. Yeah, .git is also there, right? So what did you do after you cloned that repository? Did you create another folder?
I cloned it when I did it like 2-3 times. First, I tried to do it by cloning your repository. Then it wasn't working. I could not commit it. So I tried to create my own folder and just copy the code from yours
Okay, yeah.
and paste in mine. Then yeah, and I could make the repository, but the codes are the same one, not the different ones.
Oh, so you created a file called FDB assignment, right? Sorry, folder called FDB assignment, and you
Yeah,
copied
inside home.
copied my code
Yeah,
in there, right? Okay.
yeah. I just copied this code. I mean, on the right side,
Okay.
the green things. Yeah, only these I try to copy it and copy paste it.
Oh, you installed React yourself then?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. It means then it shouldn't be the problem. So, and you committed it, right? And you couldn't get your commit in your GitHub.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm getting only
And
the one with the logo things.
oh, okay. Can you show me how you commit it to GitHub?
Uh, so I basically did like git I did right,
Okay.
and git add space dot, and git -m and some message here like
Okay.
this.
Now it is showing that changes not staged for commit. Okay. Your git add dot command is not adding those changes. Can you click on that source control once, please? On the left, you have 9 number there. Yeah.
So yeah, and other thing is I have two commits here, one right here and another here. So before I used to see only one, but I have two over here.
Oh, I think there is some issue with. So in that case, can you try let's delete that git and let's once again reinitialize that git. Okay. For that you
Reinitialize
need to
again.
type, yeah, you need to type rm is in your terminal. Just type rm space r hyphen rf and space dot git. Just type dot git. Yeah, hit enter. Okay.
Okay, yeah, one is gone now.
Now type git status in your terminal. It says not a git repository. Can you refresh it on the left inside your source control? There is a refresh icon. Yeah, right
This
there.
one, right?
This one, right? I think they should go away. It is still showing some changes. Means there is something. I think inside FDB assignment. Can you go inside FDB assignment from your terminal? Just type cd in your terminal. Just type cd space FDB assignment. You can type FDB and press tab. It will auto complete it.
This is right. FTP
Okay.
assignment.
Yeah, I hit enter now. Yeah, just hit enter now. Yeah, I think what happened? No.
Nothing actually. It says like EFTB assignment, Razum Mahorzan, and that's it.
Can you type ls there? Ls list all of those folder. Oh, okay. You are inside there, I think. Now just type ls space hyphen a once again. Hyphen
Hyphen
a.
A1.
No, only a. Yeah. Now hit enter. Okay, you have another git in there. I think you reinitialized your git inside this folder and outside this folder as well. You need to do that git init only once. Do not do that multiple times inside another folder, I think. Otherwise, that may also be copied. So just remove this git from here. And
Okay.
and you are directly working on this folder, isn't it? FTP assignment.
Yes. I have another folder homework, and inside the homework I have a FTP folder.
Oh, okay. If that is the case, then you need to initialize your git in that homework folder instead of this FTP assignment. Remove this git here. Just type the same command. Rm space hyphen rf space dot git.
Can you say again, please? REM
rf
hyphen.
rf yeah, rf means forcefully removing something, and space dot git.
Right.
Yeah, this is right. And hit enter. Now go one step back. Just type cd space 2 dot cd and space 2 dot in your terminal. Okay, hit enter. And okay, now can you click on that source control once? It shouldn't show that commit section there. Okay, this is not a git repository. That's why it is not showing anything. Now you can type git space init there in your terminal. Okay, now
So
just
initialize
try
it, yeah.
committing once again. Yeah. Just try committing once again. I think you need to create your another repository. Otherwise, we need to do something more to sync with the previous one. Yeah, just commit it with some message. Okay, it says publish
Yeah,
branch, right? Because
yeah.
we deleted our previous information with Git. For now, just create another branch, another repository, and let's see if you can still commit in there or not. You click on that publish branch, it will create a new repository. Okay. And you can write different name there. Homework is already there, right, in your GitHub. Okay, this is now publishing to GitHub. Now, can you change something in your code and commit once again? And let's see if you can still commit or not.
Over here, right?
Better to type inside that div. You cannot type anything outside that div. Just remove everything. You can change some text there. On line number 20, you can change some text. Instead of warning, you can type error or something. Yeah, you can modify this text. Anything. Okay, that's also fine.
Commit it again.
Yeah, now save it and commit it once again.
Was saving control command, yes, right?
Yeah, it's already saved, I think.
So
Yeah,
git,
you can commit now. Yeah.
I can just type git add, right, and dot.
Yeah, right. That's right. All right, now write git push to push it to GitHub.
Gaurav, previously you said we shouldn't be committing on master branch, right?
Um, Actually, if there is your one repository, you can commit there because that is the one who is controlling that repository, right? Only you.
Oh, okay.
If
So this repository is his own master branch, not
yeah,
not yours. Okay, that's fine. Okay,
not on mine. This is on Razu's one branch, one master branch. That is his one repository, right?
got it.
So yeah, Razu, please can you go in GitHub and check? You need to go inside your profile and there you'll see another repository that you just created. And you'll see two commits, uh, the first one and the second one.
Yeah, now I think I get it. Warning, yeah, error. No, yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So
Yeah.
I was pushing. No, I had two folders. That is why all this problem I had
You
because of
have
this homework and
you had two Git repository initialized, one inside your folder, another outside your folder. You were
okay.
typing git init multiple times actually. You need to type git init only once in your project.
Yeah, okay. So that is why I had like two commits over here before because I initialized in two places, in two different places.
I think so. Actually, I haven't seen such two commits appearing. Maybe I haven't initialized Git more than once. That may be the case because you have two Git history, one outside your folder, another inside your folder. That may be the reason why you are seeing two commits over there.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll try to do it again, and I will, and let's see what happens next time.
Sure. This is regarding
Thank you.
practicing things.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you do it
Yeah, thank
multiple
you.
times, you'll
Yeah.
get sense. Thanks. Okay, guys, let's continue. I will take a little less time today because my voice is slightly not good. Yeah. I cannot speak more than 1 hour, I think. So yeah, I will try to take this session in between 1 to 1.5 hours only for today. Okay, then let's go directly inside our working directory. So we are talking about asynchronous JavaScript. Asynchronous JavaScript means we are dealing with APIs, you can simply say. Actually, asynchronous means there are many more things. For now, you can understand that we want to actually communicate with external APIs coming from our backend. Actually, to simply understand, you have a backend developer in your team, and he will actually provide you such kind of APIs. And your job is to fetch those APIs in your React applications and implement it. Okay. You will do mainly two things. One thing is to implement the user interface designed by UI UX engineer in your team, UI UX designer in your team. Okay. There is another person who is called UI UX designer. He will actually design that interface. You need to implement it. The another thing is you need to implement APIs developed by the backend developer in your React application. These are the most critical tasks you will do as a React developer. That's why we also see UI UX design with Figma as well sometimes later. And you will see those syllabus are slightly not exactly going in same order, but we'll eventually cover whatever there in our syllabus. Okay. So let me share my screen here and let's do it. So I think I have my VS Code here. We were doing this thing yesterday, right? So from tomorrow, I'll try to connect with multiple screens. So I think we need to practice a lot. So let's focus on this. Do I have VS Code? Okay, let me. Okay. Let's put this on the left and this on the right. And let's see what is regarding asynchronous. What is the thing regarding asynchronous JavaScript? Asynchronous means that is actually taking some time. Synchronous means that is not taking any time. So currently I'm writing 2 lines of code here. I'm targeting this element from index.html, right? I'm getting this element from this index.html line number 11 inside JavaScript. So this element is here. I'm actually I'm actually getting this element into JavaScript using this line of code. So actually this is everything what you write till now inside JavaScript is a synchronous code. Means if you create a variable in this way, it is a synchronous code. Synchronous means JavaScript, I told you yesterday, right? JavaScript is a single-threaded programming language. So you can just see, let me show you JavaScript call stack or JavaScript engine, let's say. Yeah, you can take this image as a reference. JavaScript always execute in this location called call stack. This is also called thread. Okay, you can call it as a processor also. This is a single thread JavaScript has. This is not a thread, okay? This is only a thread, or this is where JavaScript actually execute, call stack. It means it only have this single place to execute our code. There is some other location called memory heap. This will store object, but this is not the location where our JavaScript will execute. This is the location actually, call stack is the location. That's why JavaScript needs to actually prioritize our code, right? If something is taking some time, it should actually take those code out of this location, right? Because otherwise that will that will actually block this execution, isn't it? If you can call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code here executing inside call stack. Okay, and something starts executing. For example, this thing on the top starts executing. Means other if this is executing, if this line of code is taking some time, then other cannot execute. First, this has to be executed there. That's why other are blocked, right? It will take some time. Our application will be really slow if that code is taking some time. Other cannot execute. So we need to execute multiple things in parallel as well sometimes. But I told you that JavaScript cannot do that, right? JavaScript cannot execute multiple things in parallel. It means it needs to actually send this line of code which is blocking, which is taking some time out of this call stack. It will actually send this out of this call stack and execute other line of code which are not taking time. So such kind of code which are taken out of call stack and executed later are called asynchronous code, or you can call that concept in JavaScript called asynchronous JavaScript. Okay, and there are something out of this call stack which are actually helping us to control the behavior of those asynchronous code. There is something called event loop, which will actually take that code into call stack once again, because call stack is the location where that needs to be executed later as well. That's why we send that code out of this call stack previously, right? Event loop will finally take this into call stack later as once again, and then it will execute there. That's why we will send some of our code outside of our call stack and once again take that code inside our call stack and execute there. Such kind of behavior is called asynchronous. If you directly execute everything inside this location called call stack, then that is synchronous code. You don't need to take that out, right? You don't need to wait for any time. That's why that is synchronous code. Now we are dealing with asynchronous code, means we will talk about this event loop as well. We'll talk about this what is this callback queue. We'll talk about some of the functions called onClick, onload, something like that. Okay. And these are related to actually asynchronous JavaScript. There is something outside of our call stack or outside. This is a JavaScript engine, okay? This whole rectangle, big rectangle is a JavaScript engine. Inside JavaScript engine, we have memory heap and call stack. Memory heap is just storing our objects, just referencing our objects. But call stack is actual location where our code is executing. And there is something more here as well, web APIs. Did you notice this? I actually talked about this yesterday. Web APIs. What are web APIs? Can you just guess? Where did we use yesterday? Web APIs?
From the GitHub API.
No, I mean a web API is like we just pass the URL and we get the data from the backend.
In our code, what is the web API? Can you guess? Let's go here.
Fetch.
What is that? VS Code, I think it is. It should be. It is behind here. Yeah, right here. It's full screen. Yeah, in our code, what is the web API that we are using?
URL.
Right.
URL. Yeah, I told you API, and I think you thought that this is like API. API is like URL. API is like a function, you can say. It is giving you something from somewhere, you can say. Yeah, web API is actually browser. Web means browser, okay? So web API means browser API, you can also say. Browser is Google Chrome here currently. So Google Chrome API, you can also say, okay? So Google Chrome is providing you some API here. Every browser will have the same implementation of that API, okay? You will see every browser will actually work. So here we are using this document. This document is coming from that web API. Means Google Chrome browser is providing you such kind of APIs. These are called web APIs. we are using this document.get element by ID. This is not JavaScript actually. This is coming from your web API. And we can directly use that web API inside our JavaScript because they are directly connected already. Okay. So if you connect your JavaScript and HTML already, if you open this HTML in your browser, then that web API is already available in your JavaScript. That's why you can use document here, because document is nowhere available in here, right? We haven't created any variable called document, or we haven't imported any variable called document, but we are directly using this document here. It means this is already available from web API to our JavaScript. Okay. We will later see something like fetch. We used fetch as well yesterday, right? That fetch function is also coming from our web API. The timeout, set timeout, something like that, we'll see later, is also coming from our web API. So it's kind of function which we are directly using here, not initializing anywhere. These are coming from web API actually. And there is another API, right? We talked about it yesterday as well, like dog API. We used it, right? And there is like your live API, live URL, you can say. You can sometimes it is also referred as online API, because we called web API for the browser API, right? We can say that online API. Actually, there is no name called online API. You can just remember that those URL which we are using, they are providing us some information, some data from our database, and they are referred as the API from the internet. You can say, if you only have the internet connection, you can get those result from database. Otherwise, you cannot. You can still get this result from web API without internet, because they are already available from your browser, right? So yeah, this whole is actually a JavaScript. A JavaScript consists of JavaScript engine having memory heap and call stack. It is directly connected with those web APIs as well, from where we can directly interact from those browser API. And it also has this event loop actually. And the event loop is there to control the behavior of asynchronous JavaScript. Asynchronous JavaScript is quite difficult. That's why let's directly practice some of those things instead of actually talking about this a lot, because many things will not make sense initially. That's why let's do here. Okay. To actually work with asynchronous JavaScript, we created a async function, right? We created that async function yesterday. So what is async function? That is simply a function with async keyword initially, isn't it? We will first create our function. For example, get data, something like that. This is simply a function which will return something. Okay, something will return something from here later. But this is a really simple function, and we will create this async function by just writing async keyword here. And we'll write await keyword somewhere inside this function. We can return later. We can write await now, and now we can await for our code. So await means it will take that code outside of that call stack, and other code will be executed. Let's see this. Okay, let's see this behavior. I told you that we will await for promises. So what is promises? Promises is something which is providing some data sometimes later, and you will know later what kind of function will provide promise. The most popular one is this fetch function. This fetch function will give you promise. This will not directly give you data. This will give you promise. Okay. If I write anything here, like any API URL, for now I'm not writing anything. And if you now console log the result, you can directly assign this result without await and see if it is providing you promise or not. This is slightly difficult, guys. We'll do a lot of things regarding this asynchronous JavaScript. So Don't worry, initially just try to see what I'm doing here. So now let me call this function. Let's see. I already have, no, my live server is not working. You need to click on this Go Live button to start your live server in plain JavaScript project. Let me put this somewhere here. And in your console, you can see promise, right? You can see promise here. Means this fetch function will provide you a promise. Fetch is actually once again coming from your web API. If you don't believe, then you can just cut this code for now. I'll paste it later. You can just now console log your web API. What is your web API? Once again, we console logged a document right, yesterday, right? Actually, this is a browser API. This is storing browser API. Actually, there is a parent object which is greater than document. Actually, everything starts from window instead of document. Everything starts from window, and inside window, this is actually storing every API, everything coming from your browser. Currently, it will store everything coming from your Chrome. Okay, so whatever browser you are using, they will have the same implementation of the API. It means you will see the same result. So let me save it and let's see. Window is the topmost object, or you can say the web API, and inside there you will have document. Let's see. And here, can you see we have document? This is what we were using yesterday. And with window, you can directly write window. You can directly write the property name. Window is nothing but an object here. Can you see? This is an object actually. You can just write type of window and you will see what is the type of this window. This is nothing but object, right? So inside window, you have a lot of properties. It means because object has a lot of properties, right? You have a lot of properties here. And one of them is document. That's why you can write window.document because window is document is a property of this window object, right? Now this is the same thing we wrote yesterday. And window.document will give you the HTML. You can write directly document. If something is coming directly from window, then you don't have to actually write window dot. You can directly write document. That will also work. But it is actually coming from your window. Inside your window, you also have other things like you have alert here. It means you can now use that alert as well. I told you that you can either write window.alert or directly alert. Let's see. Let me write alert window.alert here and write some message and save it. This is actually the alert API that we are using. This is the browser API. You'll see such kind of alert in some website, right? If you visit some website sometimes. So this is coming from that window.alert actually. Or you can directly use alert here. And that will also work. It means there are more things like instead of that document and alert, we have many other more things. Something like blur, something like crypto. And can you see we have fetch here? So this is the function that we are using. That's why I told you that this is a browser API. This is not JavaScript, right? This is a browser API coming from your browser window. That's why you can either write window dot fetch. This is also fine. I told you that whenever something is coming from window, you don't have to write window. You can directly write fetch here. So that is the code we are writing here, fetch. This is coming from that window actually. The actual syntax is window, but this is optional. You can either write window or directly write fetch. But actually fetch is coming from this window object. Okay? Any question?
Hey, Guru.
Yeah.
Would this fetch function be available to all the browsers, or does it just pertain to Google Chrome?
No, this is available by all the browser. Okay, this is the standard. So it will be available. This is the standard web API. Everything you will see here will be available in each and every browser.
And would we be able to use these APIs in other programming languages like Java or Python or like or any other languages?
Absolutely. These are web API, right?
Mhm.
So web API can be used in other programming languages as well.
Thank you.
But you need to make sure if that were exposed there or not. I told you that these are exposed directly in JavaScript, right?
Okay.
So we actually cannot use web API in server-side programming language, because server means terminal. You can just think, right? Server means there is no browser needed. Server means backend, you can say as well. That's why server-side programming language means there is Node.js as well, which is built with JavaScript. And you cannot use this web API in Node.js actually. You need to use it in frontend, because frontend is where the browser is associated with, right?
Mhm.
That's why you need to use it in frontend, like in Angular or like in Django. We have Django, a framework of Python. You need to use it in frontend.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, yes, please.
Hi, sorry, I have one question. Like, so if we have to pass the parameter, like in my work, like we used to use Ajax. So how do we pass the parameter? Like when we call the API, sometimes like we pass the parameter as well, right?
Yeah, we will take this parameter from here because we have a function, right? Currently. So you want to pass URL here, right? Something like that.
URL and like parameter, right?
URL and other parameters as well.
Yeah.
We'll see that. We have two parameters which is accepted by fetch. We can actually accept more things here as well, and we can get it from here, and we'll pass it from here. Okay. We'll talk about that slowly. So actually, the main thing you need to understand is fetch will actually give you a promise. So if you receive promise, then you need to actually consume it, or you need to consume means you need to first wait for few moments, at least for few moments. Okay, that may be millisecond or microsecond or second or minute. Okay, usually that is within millisecond and a second. So usually you need to wait for few moments. That's why you need to write await here. Otherwise, you will not get the data. So once you write await, now this is taken out of call stack. Let's verify that if this is taken out of call stack or not. You can just write console log here. Just let's try, okay? Let me try. This code is running after await. I'm running this code. I'm checking whether this line is executing before or not, okay? Let me write same console log here and running before await. And let me write one console here as well, running. Let's just write init. This is initial code. Okay. And let me write final console log here. And this is final. So let's see what is the order of this console logs. So what do you think? Which console log will appear first and which will appear last? It will start executing from line number 1.
So it depends. We'll get running before await first, and then we might get final second, or we might get running after await second.
Okay. Running after await second. So this is taken out of call stack, right? This code. After await, everything will be taken out of call stack. Means it will always execute after your synchronous code. It will never execute before your synchronous code. Means synchronous means without await, right? Synchronous means something like this. Synchronous means something like this, something like this. So then what will be the order here?
Final, first, running before second, running after with third.
Line number 1, line number 4, line number 12, and line number 7.
Okay, I think that will work. Line number 1, line number 4, right? Line number 12 and line number 7. Let's see. And can you verify? Is that the same?
Hey, Guruk, I'm not getting any of those. Like, I've been having trouble with that. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, currently we are talking about which line is executing when. Okay, we have many code here, right? Actually, what should happen is they should execute in order. They should execute in order actually. Order means this line will actually in your code, every line will execute from top to bottom. Okay. First line number 1 will execute. Line number 2, if there is nothing, still it will check if there is something or not. It means line number 2 will execute. Now, do you think line number 3 to 8 will execute after line number 2? Let me remove this await for now. Okay, this is creating confusion. Let's create a simple function. So I'm asking, line number 1 is executing. That is fine. Line number 2 as well. Now, will this code execute? Line number 3 to 8. Executing means will this code run?
No, it's just a function definition.
Just a function, it will be skipped, right? It will not be executed. It means line number 9 will execute. Okay, there is nothing. Line number 10 will execute. Is that right? Will it execute or will it also be skipped?
No, it
It will
will
execute.
It will execute now. Now where my cursor will go from here? On
4.
which line?
Line 3.
Line 3. Now it will go in line 3. So now line number 4 will execute, right? Because I told you that our code will always execute from top to bottom. It will not go from line 3 to line 2. It will go from line 3 to line 4. So it will execute from here, right?
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah.
Line 3 to line 2?
No. It will not execute from line 3 to line 2. Our code will always run from top to bottom. That you need to understand first. We'll never go from line 3 to line 2.
Okay.
Okay. So I reached here to line 3. Did you understand until now?
Yes.
Okay. So now it will go to line 4, right? Is that right? So now it will actually provide you. That's why initially it is providing you init here. Let me make it a little bit more zoom. So I told you that initially line 1 is executing. That's why you are seeing init here initially. This is executed first. Now line 2 is executing. I'm doing it from start once again. Okay. Line 2 is executing. Now line 9 will execute. There is nothing to print, right? Line 10 will execute. There is also nothing to print. Now my cursor will go from here because this is a function. Where is this function? This function is here from line 3. That's why my cursor will go here. This will execute line 3. Now there is nothing to print once again. Now line 4 will execute. That's why you are seeing running before await here in your code. Okay. Now line 5 will execute. This is a variable, actually variable initialization. We initialized a variable value, something coming from here, but there is nothing to print. That's why it will execute at least. And it is actually providing promise. We are not doing anything there. And once it has executed this line, it will go in line 6. There is nothing. And it will go in line 7. Now we are seeing final here. Let me do it once again. We'll see that line 7 instead of final there. Okay. Let me save it. And we are seeing line 7 right here. We are seeing line 7, and now line 8 will execute. Now from here, from line number 8, where my cursor will go? It has completed the execution of this function, right?
11.
Yeah, it will go on line 11 because we came from line 10 previously, right? We came from line 10 and line 10 means everything related to this function. And now the job of line 10 is completed. That's why we'll go to line 11. Now finally we go to line 12. That's why final is shown here. This is how our code execute. Okay, this is the basics of any programming languages. Most of the time you'll see everything will start executing from top to bottom. Okay, but in between we saw that we are coming from here, line 2, line 9, line 10, once again line 3, because this is a function. Whenever you are using that function, it will execute. If you are not using that function, it will never execute actually. Now what will happen? What will we see on the console? If I run this code, what will we see on the console, guys?
Init and final.
Init and final.
Init and final, that's right. Because we never called this function. It will never execute actually. So what happens is our line number 1 executed, line number 2, line number 9, and line number 10. Okay. So this is how our code actually execute in programming languages. Now, there is slight different behavior here. What we did is we wrote async here. And now we wrote await here. And what I told you is whenever you are writing await, everything after await will execute at the end. At the end means after line number 12. So let's do it once again, okay? So let me first save it and let's see the output first. And it will start executing from line number 1. That's why we are seeing init here. Now it will execute line number 2, nothing there. Line number 9, nothing there. Line number 10, we have a function call here. Now it will go inside of that function. Now it is sorry, it is now seeing this line number 4. It will go here, line number 3, and line number 4. It is seeing that console from line number 4. That's why you are seeing running before await. That is coming from line number 4 actually. You can also see the corresponding line here on the right, okay? Coming from line number 1 and line number 4. Now it will execute line number 5. Now what is here? Here it finds await. Now it will take every code after await out of this call stack and it will now not execute this one. Okay. Now that job is finished. Now it will return to line number 8 and it has completed the execution of line number 8. It will go to line number 9. Now it will go to line number 10. That's why you are seeing final here. So everything is completed right here. Now there is no code left, right? Now it will take that code which was actually removed previously from call stack back to call stack, and now it will execute that code. Now your line number 6 will execute and line number 7 will execute. That's why you are seeing running after await here at the end. Does it somehow make sense now?
Or what if we have like 15 console logs after line number 12?
It will execute all of those console logs. So if we have a lot of console logs here, it will actually execute all of them before actually executing this one. Let's see. It will execute all of them. Not only this, if you have a long loop which is taking a lot of time, let me create it, okay? So I am creating a loop here. Initial value starts from 0 and this will go up to 10,000. It will execute 10,000 times, not only 15 times, 10,000 times, and each and every time we are incrementing it. And let me console log here. Console log I here, and let's see what happens here. Okay, let me save it. Can you see? All of those are executed. Before executing that last line, if you make 100,000 or even more, let me make it 100,000 and save it. Now here, all of these are executing. If you make it even more here, now it is taking a lot of time before printing this code. line number 7 code. Yeah, it will crash your browser if you try to do this. It will print in loop here. I think I need to stop this, and instead of trying to print that I, let me print this here running loop. Let me save it. And now can you see this is executing? This had never executed, line number 7. And if it reaches this number, now only after that execution of this for loop is completed, because this is synchronous code. After the synchronous code is executed, line number 7 will execute at the end.
Correct. This also seems to be the behavior of the fetch, right? What if instead of fetch, we had some like asynchronous function which would reach out to the database, like and select a particular entity out of a database? It would be a synchronous function as well, right? And instead of fetch, we are using that function in which we are trying to fetch out a particular row out of a database. And now it depends upon the time, right? Like it might take, like if the database table is like very, very big, it will take like comparatively longer for us to get that value. But if the database table is small, like the asynchronous call would be faster, right?
Yeah.
And in that case, would you still say that running after await would execute after all the synchronous code?
You mean database may be really fast enough, right?
Yes.
The main takeaway is, yeah. However, the time taken by the database, it will actually execute at the end. It doesn't depend upon that time actually.
Okay.
It depends upon whether that code is synchronous or asynchronous.
All right.
If that is synchronous, if it is really fast enough, even that is really fast, it will execute at the end.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, guys, any more question here? So this will be slightly confusing to you, really complex concept regarding synchronous and mixing synchronous and asynchronous together. But it is really simple if you understand the basic. The basic thing is, if you have asynchronous code, so where is that asynchronous code coming from? From this promise, from this await. So if you have that asynchronous code, then it will execute at the end. That's all. So if you have two asynchronous code, then that will later we'll see those will execute in order. First asynchronous code first, second asynchronous code second. But we need to specify the order. Otherwise, now I think, I don't know who asked me a question regarding the database time. Now that depends upon the time taken by the database. So if that time is really fast, then if there are two asynchronous call, then if the time taken by the first asynchronous is slower than the second asynchronous code, then second asynchronous code execute first. We'll see that behavior slightly slowly in the future session. Okay, but for now you need to understand that asynchronous and synchronous code are two different things. First, your browser will actually execute the synchronous code from your JavaScript file, and then at the end it will execute asynchronous code, regardless of the time taken by the synchronous code. Okay, it will always execute synchronous code.
So I understand that line number 5 is where everything stops, right? So we don't execute anything below that. When do we actually say that, okay, now from this line again, execute kind of stuff?
Yeah, that is actually that is watched by that event loop. Did you remember? Can you remember that event loop? We saw that previously in the picture. That behavior. So after this line is completed, right? So how does JavaScript know how to when to execute this line of code, or which line of code needs to be executed? Whenever this is taken out of that call stack, event loop will take record of this code. It will actually register that this code is now needs to be executed once everything in this file is executed. Means once synchronous code is executed, I need to actually give this code back to that call stack, and call stack will execute this line of code. So event loop is there, which will control this kind of behavior.
My question is, so anything below await is not going to be executed, right? So even if you have like 6, 7 lines of code.
Yeah, before synchronous code, it will not execute. That's right.
Yeah. And at what can we have some kind of like saying, okay, I only wanna avoid executing like the first 3 lines, and then I want to start executing that as well. Because if you didn't have that function, like the curly braces closing, it would just stop working it altogether, right?
Yeah, you mean if we have multiple lines here,
Multiple
line
lines here,
7,
and maybe I just don't want to execute the like. I don't want to execute line number 7, but I want to execute line number 8, something below line number 7.
that
If you
is
had
not
any
possible.
code.
Before synchronous code execution, that is not possible. That is the default behavior of JavaScript, because JavaScript has a single location, right? In other programming languages like Python and Java, they have multiple threads. That's why they can do that job, but JavaScript cannot. JavaScript needs to execute synchronous code first, and they will only execute those code later. That's
So
why you need
anything below line 5 up to the curly brace will not be executed until you execute the synchronous code.
Right, that's right. That's why we as a developer, we as a JavaScript developer need to make sure which code we want to execute first and which code later. So what is blocking and what is non-blocking code is really, really important thing in JavaScript. So we need to make sure, we need to take care of blocking and non-blocking code.
So can we control these event loops manually?
Yeah, we'll do that slowly. Okay. Actually, we'll control the order that is coming from that event loop. We can sometimes say that, hey, which one is whichever is coming faster, you can actually throw that in this JavaScript call stack. Otherwise, we can sometimes say, hey, just provide those in order, because sometimes we want something in order, right? We want to first log in the user before showing their data, right? So yeah, we'll see.
I don't know if I'm going ahead, but I saw a thing on event loop where it says on. So is it like a default value if you're not mentioning it?
What is that?
Like I saw on event loop on click and undone on the picture before this. And is it a
No.
default value if it's not, if you're not providing an event loop?
They are just the example of event. There is not on, there is no on click and on load only. There are many more on chain, something like that as well. They are just example actually. Okay. So at first you need to be able to create such kind of async function. Async function are really easy to create, right? You need to just have a name async before your function. If you have a function expression, you need to, let me create this function expression, right? Let me remove async here. Function expression means writing something in this way, and remove this function name from here. Now, where do you think I need to write that async keyword?
Async result.
Async, yeah, I have await here. Previously, I was writing async here. Now, where do I write async keyword? Where should I write that?
Is it await before await?
Before the function.
Yeah, right here, before the function. I told you that you'll write async always before the function. Right here. So function expression, you will write async keyword here. Let me make this arrow function. Now, where do you think I need to write that async keyword?
Before currently.
Before the empty braces.
Yeah, before the empty braces here. Because this is actually the function starts. From here, the function starts, right? Just make sure that you can write async keyword in any function syntax.
What is different?
Get data is, let's assume that get data is giving us the data, right? Because like by the definition of like with the name of the function, get data is supposed to give us the data asynchronously. And let's say we are receiving the data out of it, right? Like get data is giving us some values. And in console log, if we are trying to like print out the value that we get from get data, it will not work, right?
Oh, you mean let's return that data here and just print that get data in console here on line number 10?
Yeah, yes. Let's say instead of like console log in line number 7, we are trying to like return the value. Like let's say fetch, await fetch is returning us some value, like retrieving the data out of a database, and it's giving us some values. And in line number 7, we are like console logging the value that has been returned to us. Then like get data, like let's say like that data has, we have to do some calculation with that get data in line number 10. That will not work, right?
Yeah, that's a great question actually. You mean let's assume that we receive data here and I'm returning that data. I'm just returning something. Okay, later we'll return real data, but this is the same thing. But actually, this is now get data is providing you actual data from this return statement from line number 7. Now, what will happen if I console log the data coming from that function directly here? Because this line is still synchronous, right? Line number 10. So will I now see this data? Actually, this whole function is providing data. And this should be replaced by whatever coming from that function, which is data. So now will I see that data in my console? That's your question, right?
Yes, exactly, Gaurav. That's my question. And based upon your explanation, like I'm assuming it would not work because like line number 10 is the synchronous function and it will only be called after a synchronous function. But and that's a great conflict.
Yeah, right. So now what do you think? What will happen? It will not work means what will we see then? We'll see something because we are immediately getting something coming from this function. And this is a asynchronous function. And we are using fetch and we are storing something coming from fetch in our result. I should actually return result here actually. And we are actually returning something coming from our fetch from this function immediately, right? So immediately, what will this fetch function provide to us?
Promise.
Promise. Yeah, that's why we'll see promise there. We'll see immediately a promise because we want that data immediately, right? We cannot get immediately the final result. That's why we will, the result of this expression will be promise from line number 10. So if I try, yeah, just give me one moment, please, and I'll get back to you. Let me try data writing anything here. Try writing anything here. Still, it will give me a promise because it says that, hey, I'm promising you and you want to actually get it immediately. So I still have my promise. So just try it after a few moments. That's why we cannot actually directly print something coming from a async function. If you want to directly print something coming from your async function, you will always get promise. That is actually the default behavior here as well with async await function. Yeah, this question is mostly frequently asked in interview as well. So what will be the output of the async function if you directly want to print it? And the output will be promise always.
So is this a good thing or not? Or
this is a good thing. This is a good thing. You need to wait, right? You cannot do this. You need to wait. So that's why later what we will do is we will consume something coming from here because we will eventually return, right, from async function. The function job is to return something. That's why we'll do something like we are immediately seeing the syntax. Okay, don't be confused. We'll do something like this and raise console log raise here, and let me save it now. Now we'll get that data here. If you want to get something coming from your async function which is returned, you need to actually write this syntax. Actually, this is called consuming a promise. This is what we are going to see in maybe if there is time, we'll start it today and we'll continue this thing tomorrow. All right. Otherwise, if you directly want to print this function, it will not give you data. It will give you a promise. Yeah, somebody is asking me some question. Yeah, can you repeat this? And did you get your answer? Yeah. Yes, please.
I have one question. If you copy number 12 to number 13,
Yes.
then each
Something like this, right?
yeah, if you copy number 12 to number 13, then after number 12, it will go back to asynchronous function, or after number 12 and 13.
Yes. After line number 13 is executed, it will go to asynchronous function.
Sorry?
So after this line number 13 is executed, it will go here. Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, it will go here, and after line number 5, it will actually execute.
Okay.
Whatever
Thank
there.
you.
Okay, guys. Any more question? It's slightly confusing, right? Are you getting it properly, or are you not getting it at all?
Kirk, I have like a really good question on the architecture. You showed us that the execution thread is a single thread, which is a call stack, right? And let's say we have like two tasks. One task is for the calculation. We are doing some sort of calculation, and in second task, like let's say we are printing some values, like just console logging out the values. And if we are to make the calculation function a synchronous function, it would be taken out of the call stack, right? And it would that job would be handed off to the event loop based on what you have explained to us. And then like if we are to like follow the jobs that are that substance in the call stack, the following function that would run would be the printing function that is left there. But while the printing job is being done in the call stack, we have our calculation task, which is supposed to be done in like in the event loop, right? And like event loop would not do the calculation until like it will just like put the task back to the call stack.
Yeah, event loop will just hand over the job. It will not actually execute. That's right.
Oh, that means like in JavaScript there is absolutely no way to do the parallel the 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 parallel programming.
No, there is no way. But actually, it was loading previously, right? JavaScript started loading fetching this API from here, right? And
Yeah.
it handed this to event loop. It will actually fetch this API because it initiated, right? It triggered that API fetch. It will actually start fetching in the background as well, because it has started from here and it has actually taken it out of call stack. And once that API is fetched completely, then we can take that from that event loop as well. So fetching something is done in background, but if you want to execute the result, the result coming from that fetch, then you need to wait. You need to wait for that moment. And you need to bring that in call stack, and you need to do that job here. But if that fetch is initiated from here, it will go to that in the callback queue. Actually, the location is callback queue, and the event loop is there to actually send it back to call stack, and it will actually fetch it in the background because it has started fetching. It will actually fetch, and we can also detect. We can say that, hey, is that fetching is completed or not? We can actually ask event loop, and he will say that if that is completed, then we will actually take it back to our call stack. Otherwise, if that is not completed yet, then we can still do some more thing. We can even do other await expression as well. And if that fetching is completed, then we will take it to the call stack and do our rest of the things here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so let me take around 10 to 15 minutes here to actually describe or actually implement the previous syntax, that is consuming some promises. Consuming promises means actually using that promises. So it means currently this get data is a function which will also give you promise. Why? Because we are immediately returning something from here. That's why we will get promise. So just remember, if you are returning something from your async function, then you'll always get a promise. Okay, previously I was also thinking that returning something from here and not getting here. So what should I do? Actually, this is a promise. That's why I need to once again consume that promise. Consume that promise means I don't have to wait now, right? I don't have to wait because data is already received. That may have been already received. Now what I should do is actually use that data. But sometimes I also need to wait as well. That's why once again I will use that await or I previously used that dot then method. That's why I need to see whether I need to wait or not. If I need to wait, then that await or dot then method will do its job. It means I need to actually even write once again write await or that dot then syntax once again to get something coming from here. What I'm saying is you can do it in two ways. Let me make another function. We are doing a lot of function here. If you don't know that dot then syntax, what you can do is you can create async another function, then final. This is just printing the result. This function is just printing the result. And now call this function from here. And this is promise, right? Whenever you have promise, you'll write await. Because this is a promise. We need to wait, right? Promise means we always need to wait. Even that is already received, we need to wait. That's why I'm waiting here. Now finally, I can now store this result here. And now I will console log the result. I need to at least call this function, otherwise it will not execute at all. Now, this is how this one, the first function is getting actual data from this fetch function. We are not using it. We'll do that eventually. Okay. Currently, it is providing us some data from this get data function. Now we are accepting this data here into another function because that is a promise. That's why we are writing await here. Let's see. In result, this data should actually appear in our console. And we are seeing that data, right? Let me remove this line of code from here and init. And we are seeing this data. Means we are using a sync function once again. So here I will now talk about immediately invoked function expression as well. Let me ask you one question. Is there any way to call this function without actually writing this function name? Can I call it itself without mentioning it somewhere, without writing the function name? If you don't want to write the function name, means you don't have that function name here as well. Can you do that?
You talked about like the callback function. It should be a function, a callback function inside another functions.
No, this is not a callback function. This is a normal function, and we want to run this function without calling this function. Is this possible in other programming language? Have you done that?
By making it anonymous function.
Making it anonymous function. Anonymous means without name, right? Can I remove this name from here? Anonymous means no identity, right? I'm actually deleting the name. Now it says syntax error. I cannot write function without name. Yeah, actually, there is a concept in JavaScript called immediately invoked function expression. We can immediately invoke a function. It means we can immediately call our function. So what you need to do is wrap everything related to your function inside this parenthesis. And after this parenthesis, just call it. Just write this two small bracket. And now you can actually remove the identity. You can remove the function name because we don't need this, right? We don't want to call this. We want to immediately call this. Now let's see. We can still see this data is coming. So this is sometimes useful. If you immediately wants to execute your function without calling it, then you can use this expression. This is really simple, right? You need to first wrap your entire function inside this small bracket, and you need to use those small bracket once again to call this function immediately there.
Does it have to be right next to get data function?
No.
Mm.
You mean, can we write it above here as well, right?
Yeah, or somewhere else. Yeah.
Somewhere else. Okay. So yeah, there is an important concept. We'll talk about it as well. You can sometimes access the variable declared below, sometimes not. We'll talk about it, but this is a normal function, right? This is a normal function. It should be possible, right? Let's see. And it says cannot access get data before initialization. This is a really important concept. You can actually do, let me remove it, okay? Let me remove this line of code and make it a function declaration. Function declaration means removing it from here, removing the arrow function and writing the function here as well. And if I save it now it says, what is that? Oh, no name, get function, get data. Now if I save it, now you can see it is working. Now there is some difference between function expression, function declaration, and arrow function now. So I think we'll talk about this behavior once we finish some basic concepts. So we can sometimes do it, we cannot sometimes do it. We can do it with function declaration. We cannot do it with arrow or function expression. Right? Okay then. So any more question, guys? So what was I doing previously is actually consuming promise. Consuming promise means getting something coming from promise. We can either do it with a function. I think this is a really long syntax. The other alternative is to use, actually async await was introduced in 2017, I think. But modern JavaScript was introduced in 2015. So in 2015, there was already a promise, and there was something to consume that promise, and that is that dot then method. So what we can do is just call this function here. This is a promise, right? This is a promise. Now if you have a promise, then you can use this dot then method directly there. You need to write dot then, and dot then is a higher order function similar to map filter reduce function that you have previously. You have map function, right? Inside that map function, what do we need to pass?
Anonymous function.
Another function, yeah, that is anonymous, something like this. You can write arrow function as well. So you will pass the same, you will write the same syntax here as well. Inside this then method, you will once again write this function or another function. You can, if you have confusion, you can write function itself here. Function, no name, right? Because it will be called by this then method. Previously, it was called by that map method. Now it will itself accept two parameters. Sorry, it will itself accept one parameter here. Later we'll see two parameter right here. It will pass another function here as well. Something like this. We'll see this slightly later. But currently it is actually accepting a single parameter, and that parameter is self a function, and that function is also accepting some parameter. Actually, there is slight confusion here, argument and parameter. This is a function, dot then is a function, and we are passing argument here inside this function. And that function will accept some parameter here. I'm writing a here. And now I'm going to print what is that a here inside this function. Let me save it. And can you see what is that a? So let me write. And can you see where is this coming from? Data returned. Which line? You can see line here as well. Line number 14, right? And this is the line number 14. It means this A is return data return. This A is whatever returned from your async function. Okay. So in this way, you can actually consume your promise as well. Instead of writing this code, we are writing this line of code. It's really simple as well. You can actually refactor this code. You can say that this is a response, or sometimes you write race here. You can write race here as well. You don't have to write this function declaration. You can also write arrow function. And with arrow function, no need to write this curly brace if you don't want to write multiple lines there. And now this is the really simple syntax, which will actually give you something coming from your async function, which is a promise. Hey guys, any confusion here?
Guruk, what if the async function was not returning a value?
By
Let's say
default,
what
what will be returned? If it is not returning, then what will be returned from a function?
null.
Null or undefined? Undefined?
Undefined. All right.
Yeah, undefined. If I save it now, we'll see undefined because
Uh,
undefined is returned from this async
that,
function.
that is true. That is true. But let's say we were console logging something.
Console logging here?
Yes, we were initially console logging something, right? Let's say we were console logging uh uh like a string value.
I mean, let's say let's write console log something, anything, right?
Yes.
Console log means it will directly create. It is actually something like side effect. Currently, it will directly print this in the console here. Because we call this function, right? Whatever is there will be executed, and it will also see if there is a return statement or not. It will execute every line of code first, right? And later at the end, it will see return statement is there or not. It means it will print this in the console first, and it will later see return statement. And we are also printing result coming from this function, which is coming from this return, and it doesn't have any return. That's mean it means undefined is coming. It means we'll see Nepal and undefined in our console.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, guys. So I think I'll end this session here for today. If you have some question, then let's discuss for a few minutes more. Are you getting these things? Does this thing making some sense, or is this really difficult, guys? What do you think about these concepts that we discussed today?
I think we just need some hands-on assignments or some sort of like programming assignments.
Actually, yeah, I'm planning to do those. I have listed a lot of questions to practice in the session first, and then we'll do assignments as well. But sometimes we can only understand what we are trying to do here. If you know what is the main goal, why are we actually writing such syntax? What is the main goal? Because we do really practical application. We build practical application as a developer or engineer, right? That's why the main goal of writing such kind of thing is we need to actually communicate with an API. API is coming from our backend server or database. That's why we need to communicate, and it will take some time. That's why we are introducing this concept called asynchronous. Okay, that's the main goal here. It means we will slowly communicate with our external API. Now maybe we will do questions from tomorrow. Let's first do more things here. We have something called error handling here with asynchronous JavaScript, because you cannot guarantee that always the data will come, right? Sometimes error will come from your server. You need to actually handle that error as well. And we need to sometime actually execute something in order or something in parallel. Parallel means whoever comes first will win. Order means we need to actually execute one after another. Okay, so can we end this session for today then, guys?
Hi, Gaurav. Nirisha here. So we have the session for the 3 hours. So we have the backup trainer of this front-end developer. So we will meet after 10 minutes.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay. So we have the Nitish Kafle here. He will take after that.
All right, guys. So I will end this session here. Maybe from tomorrow we will continue 3 hours of session.
All right. Thank you, Gaurav.
For today. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye. Have a good day.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you, Gaurav. Take care.
Okay, there is take care.
Hey, everyone.
There is break for 10 minutes. So we will meet after 10 minutes. Thank you, guys.
Okay, hello. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Hello.
cool.
Yes,
Hello.
Nitish. Hello.
Let me share my screen and then we'll get started. Everybody can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, before we start, I saw that you guys were in asynchronous JavaScript. So this is probably the most advanced topic in JavaScript in general. So I don't expect you to like understand everything in detail in like a day or two. But before I start, I just wanted to know like how good of an understanding do you guys have of promise or a callback? Do you guys understand promise? What is a promise and how it works? Like, can you guys like, are you comfortable writing a promise?
No.
Not really, honestly.
Okay, cool. That's
I
fine.
have an
That's fine.
understanding of it, but not sure.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, basically, I'll just jump in. I'll move to. I'll talk about callbacks, and then I'll jump into promise. And then we are going to go ahead and create our own fetch API. So we're not going to use the browser API. We're going to create our own fetch API using promise. So I think that's going to give you a good understanding of what promise is and how it works. OK. Cool. Do you guys know what a callback is? Like, can anybody tell me what a callback is? No one? Okay, so callback is basically a function that is passed on to another function, right? So what is a callback? For example, we have a function. Let's say our function name is ABC, right? And then let's say we have another function. So here, if we call another function, this is what we call a callback, right? We do some task here. We are calling a function inside of another function. So this is basically what a callback is. So before 2015, we used callbacks to make our code asynchronous. So I'll give you an example. So for example, we have console and it says hello 1, okay, and 2, and 3. So here, because oh, give me a second. FGS. Oh, side here. 1 second. Okay. So, okay. Because JavaScript is a synchronous programming language, we have what happens here is JavaScript goes line by line, right? So whenever we had to do any task, for example, we wanted to make a network request, or if we want to do any file handling, or for example, let's say we want to do image processing, that is going to take time, right? So how did we do that? Before that, we used callback. So here, for an example, let's say let's create a function, right? That is going to be an add function. So what it does is we use set timeout. So what the set timeout is in web API, right? And what it does, it's basically gives us time, right? It's like a timer. So we're gonna write a console log here, and we're gonna call this function, right? So when you run this, we basically get like hello 1, 2, 3, and then it goes into that function, right? Same is how synchronous JavaScript works. But in order to make it asynchronous, what we used to do was we use set timeout. That means we give it some time, and then we are gonna process it, right? So here you see it's going to wait for around 2 seconds, and then it's going to give you it's going to return you the value from this function. So within set timeout, we use callback to make it asynchronous. So how do we do that? Yeah, it's basically, for example, we have another function. Let's call it add2. It takes two value, right? A and B, and we do set timeout. And this is going to, and then we give another parameter. We can call it callback or anything, but this is going to be a parameter, is a callback, and we're going to call that callback because callback is a function, right? And then we're going to add A and B. And then we give it 0 because it's going to be an instant. It's going to be instant, 0 seconds. So we're going to have another function called result, and we're going to log result. Let's say plus result and data, right? Now here, if we call add2 function, and then we can pass argument, let's say 1, 2, and we're going to pass the result. What happens is result is a callback function, right? Result takes in data. And then now when we run this, it's going to give us 3, and 3 is coming from a callback function, right? From add2, because 2 is taking in result. Result is a callback function. So that's how we did asynchronous programming before promises, before async await. Now you can have multiple callbacks. You can have callback 2, callback 3, and then you have to write set timeout for each callback. So then what happens is your code grows so much larger. It becomes like a hell, right? So there is a term called callback hell. So that is what it does. Like we have so many set timeouts, it's hard to keep track of, and that's when promises comes in, right? Do you guys have any question on callback or like anything else? Just like go ahead and like just ask me the questions, okay? Okay, now when we look into promises, we talked
question.
about, yeah.
In line 23, when you have plus data, where is that data word coming from?
Okay.
Because I didn't
Cool.
see it above.
Okay, so everything is here, right? We are just calling the function downwards. So we are going into add2, which is a function. So this function, we are not using this function. So it comes into add2. Add2 is taking A, B, and callback, right? Callback is going to be the result, right? But here, instead of this function, instead of this parameter, we are calling this function, right? So this is going to be a function inside of a function inside of a function. So that's what a callback hell is. That's why we have promises. That's why we have async await. Now this function takes data, right? And currently, this function is also going to be the callback function because we have function inside of a function. So callback function is going to add 1 and 2 because it's A plus B, and then is going to return that data, right? So that's how we have like, that's how we have this result. Ending result is a 3. So that is callback hell. We don't use callbacks until and unless it's necessary. We use promises, async await. We try to avoid callbacks.
So I see where it's adding the two numbers. In what line is it assigning that value to that data parameter in line 22?
Right. So you see this function is calling callback. It has callback. So callback is assigned as a result, and result is a function.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why.
So it's just it just keeps going down. It's just a new callback.
Yes.
You're just naming it something different each time.
Yes. So it's like function inside of function inside of function. So it keeps going on because we are trying to make it asynchronous.
Okay.
Hello, Nitish.
Okay. Yes.
Sorry, I have one more question. Like,
yeah,
in line number 8, you passed like 2 parameters, 1, 2, and you call the function result, right? So in
right.
there is one parameter called data.
Right.
So, but you haven't passed that data in result in 8, right? So, and you said
right.
like, so, I didn't get that quite.
Okay. Okay. Not a problem. So when we pass result here, we are basically calling this function. So right now, callback is going to store result. Okay, result function. And when it comes here, and the result is going to return that data, right? It's going to log it, right? It's going to take in, it is going to pass that argument. So callback is currently,
But you do
what
not
is callback?
data, right?
Sorry?
But you do not have any data. I mean, no data is passed. I mean, no parameter, no argument is passed in result.
Right, we are passing the parameter. We are passing a prop. By prop, you can pass data from one function to another function to another function. So when you go when you go inside a function, again you go inside a function, you can pass props or data without directly passing the data. So that is called prop drilling, right? For example, you can say function data, and then you can give it some parameters, right? You can call it add.
But add wouldn't be a parameter, right?
Add can be a parameter. It is a prop. Add is not a value, right? Here data is not a value. It is representing the value of a callback. When we pass this result here, it's going to be, callback is going to be result, right? Result is taking a value. So that value that we pass, that callback returns, is returned by result. So that is called callback hell. So we don't do that. That is not an appropriate way to do it. That's why they develop, that's why they wrote code on promises. That's why they have what do you call it, async await. That's why we have that. This is not a good way to do it, but like I'm just showing you why promises, why async await, why are we using async await, and why are we using promises. Cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, now it makes sense.
Okay. Okay. Now this is how we made this synchronous JavaScript to asynchronous. We are using set timeout. It's going to give this job to the browser. Browser is going to use the timer API within set timeout. Set timeout is a function, and then it's going to return us back the value. And that's how we used to write asynchronous JavaScript. But now, like, we have promises, like fetch. Fetch is a function, like it uses promises. So what is a promise? Promise is basically a technique, right, to make synchronous JavaScript to asynchronous JavaScript. So like in real life, whenever we make a promise to someone, what do? We fulfill that promise, right? But whenever, in order to fulfill it, we take the promise, right? We have three different states. We fulfill it. We are working on the promise in real life, so that is called pending state, or we don't fulfill it, right? We don't fulfill it. So promise has these three states based on real life, and these states are called resolved for fulfill. For pending is pending state. We don't use it normally. Whenever it's loading or whenever the state is currently fetching, that's going to be the pending state. We don't use it. It's basically same thing as resolved, but it is in the pending state. And then we have rejected, or we have reject. So this is called non-fulfilled. We have three states of a promise. So the way we write promise is, let's just write a function that say do something. Inside of the function, we are going to return a promise. So this is the syntax of a promise. So we make a new promise, and it's going to take resolve and reject, right? Like in real life, either we fulfill it or we don't fulfill it. So this is going to be the function. And right now, we do some asynchronous tasks here, right? Asynchronous task inside of a promise, like fetching a data from an API or anything. So for right now, I'm going to just assume we have an error. I'm going to assume we have an error. So if we have an error, or if we don't have an error, which is this is not error, or you can say if error is not equals to true, same thing. Right? So if we don't have an error, what we're gonna do is we're gonna resolve it. That means if I don't have an error, I have successfully done what I told you, like what I promised, right? So successful. So this is what a promise is. Now else, if I don't fulfill it, I need to reject it. So here I'll say error, right? I didn't fulfill the promise, whatever I said. So we need to call this, because it's a function, we need to call this function, right? So the way we call it is do something. Now, if we run it, let's add here source just to class.js, go live and inspect it. Here, what do you get? We get an error, right? Why did we get an error? It says on caught in promise, but we are giving error and a value, right? We are giving error and value called error, but it's not print giving us error. Instead, it's rejecting us. So because it's a promise, in fetch, how do you take the data? Whenever you fetch an API, we use then, right? Because once we have the promise, we need to resolve it, right? And in then we get a response. The response can be anything. You can write a res or you can write anything. It's just a variable, but it is a response that we got. So for right now, I'm going to console log the response, right? So I do this, I still have an error because I am currently writing this code for resolve, right? Not for reject. So how do we write for reject? Reject is basically error handling. So we catch it, we catch the error, we can say error, and we can log the error, right? Now, when we log the error, because it's false, our error is true. So if it is true, it's gonna go to else and it's going to say reject. So it's going to print error, right? So that's how a promise works, right? In general, like if you look into fetch, it's the same thing behind the hood. It's the same code. It's using resolve, reject, and then that's how it's processing, right? Do you guys have did you guys get any understanding of promise of or how it works? Because we are going to deep dive into fetch and we are going to create our own fetch API using the same code.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So on line 42, you first do the response if it's a resolve, and then that dot catch, is it only used for errors or can it be used for other things as well?
Yes, dot catch is only for error. That's how we do error handling on a promise.
So what happens if you delete the line for the resolve and only do just for error?
Like this?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I think we still have error, but we're going to get an issue here if we set it as false, because now it's going to be true, right? It's going to go to resolve instead of reject. And we don't have a code for resolve, we have a code for reject. So it's going to show us nothing because it's not the promise is not fulfilled, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Same with fetch. You see the same syntax, right? You write fetch and then you write then, and you get a response. You write something here, and then you do catch. If you have an error, you write here. The syntax is the same. So this is a promise. So under the hood, it takes resolve and a reject. And resolve is whenever the promise is successful, whenever a request is successful. Reject is whenever you have an error or whenever you want to catch any error or you want to do something else other than if the promise is not fulfilled, what do we want to do that is going to be inside of reject. Cool. Any other questions on this one? Because now we're going to look into fetch and we are going to create our own fetch that instead of using fetch, we're going to use our own promise to get data from an API. Okay. I'm going to create app2.js, and I'm going to copy this code over here. And we're going to, instead of do something, let's say my fetch, right? And it is still going to be my fetch. That's a function. Now here, everything is going to be the same, but we are going to do our asynchronous task here, right? So but in order to make a request, we use XML HTTP request for fetch, which is, let me show you. So what fetch uses is, fetch API uses two things. One is XML HTTP request, and the other thing that it uses is, what does it use? Let me see. It uses response object, right? Okay. Now what we're gonna do is we are gonna create a variable, and we're gonna call request, and we're gonna do a new XML HTTP request. So that is provided by the browser. So it is what makes a network request. So if you go to MDN, look about it, it basically makes a network request. It interacts with the server, right? Under the hood, with fetch also uses XML HTTP request. Axios uses XML HTTP request. Anything that you use to make a network request, it uses XML HTTP request on a web. So XML HTTP request provides us with some function. We're going to use those functions, which is one of the function is open. So here open, we are going, let's have a URL. Let's have JSON placeholder. We are going to fetch some data. We are going to create our own API and fetch some data, right? So let's fetch some user data, user. So we have this data, which is on JSON format. So we're going to take this URL. We're going to go here and we are going to go here. So this thing, it's same as fetch, and then you give an URL. It's the same thing, literally the same thing, right? So once you fetch it, what do you want to do? We want to load it, right? We have an unload function. It is provided by XML HTTP request. So onload means once our data is loaded, that means we have successfully resolved our promise. That means we are successful. We have done our part on the promise. So that's why we are going to use resolve. And then on the request, we're going to use response text. So response text is also provided by HTML. Everything that we use with request is provided by XML HTTP request, because we are using, it has an object. We are using those objects. Now, and then we need to handle the error function, right? In a promise, we use resolve and reject. Now here, we have another call on error. So here we are going to reject it. So request, again, response text. So response text is nothing, it's just the text. For example, whenever you are successful, what does it provide? And whenever you are unsuccessful, what does it provide? It's the output. It's the output, just the output. So we don't need this. We already are using resolve and reject on inside of a promise. So now we need to send the request. Request.send. Now, if we see the output here, we are still getting error. Oh, it's app2, right? app2.js. Here, failed to execute open, 2 arguments required, but only 1 present. Let's see. On open, okay, yeah. So we need to provide what kind of method we are doing for the URL that we are providing. So we are doing a GET request, right? Post request is whenever you want to publish a data, like you want to do CRUD application, you have GET request, post request, put request. So currently we are only getting it, so we are putting a get request. So if you see, we are getting that data. So this is like same thing that fetch uses inside of fetch. You do the same thing. Like this is literally the fetch API. And now like once you know promise, once you understand promise, you know that fetch is doing the same thing under the hood. You are only calling here, you are calling the URL. So in order to make that, let's just pass this as a URL, right? Let's pass this as a URL. And here you can pass your own URL, right? It's the same thing. Do you guys have any questions on this one, on anything? I don't expect you to understand it fully, but like just the general concept of how a promise works, what is fetch actually doing? And like whenever you are using fetch, you have that basic understanding of what's happening.
Instead of var, can we write let or
Yes.
const?
You can write const, but you know there are
With
three
const, you
differences.
can't change it later, right?
Right. So
Okay, yeah.
right, and with also var is globally scoped. That means you can use in any scope, but let is limited to this function, right? It is block scoped. It is limited to this block.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's basically our mini fetch API that we created on our own that does what fetch does. Here you can also what you can do is one question. I was on a session. One person asked, "Yeah, how do you pass the parameters?" Right, like on a promise, you just give it as a param, right? Anything, it can be a parameter. It's a parameter, right? Now, when you give a parameters instead of get is going to be a method, right? So here, what we can do is we can specify it's a method called get, and we can use that from the parameters params dot method, right? So it's going to get this method. So there you go. So that's basically a fetch API, like just by using promise instead of using fetch directly. Another question that I saw that came up was about database, right? About promises on a database. I think someone asked this. So you know about Mongoose, right? Mongoose, we have Mongoose, we have Sequelize, all of these MongoDB, all of these data like both support promises and callbacks. So like everything is built, like everything is built on top of our promises and callbacks, but like promises are the one that is more preferred. But one of the most important interview questions is basically how do you about promise, like mostly people are going to ask you how do you write a promise, how do you resolve it, how do you handle errors, like how do you do error handling, those kind of things. So basically catch method is basically used in error handling. So here if we have like just random, now our URL is broken, so it's going to catch, it's going to give us an error, and that error is this name is not resolved, so this is the error. So that is that. Do you guys have any questions on how a promise works or how fetch works?
I have a question with the
Hmm?
method. Is method, are you using it as a function or?
No, method, it's an object, right? It's a JavaScript object, and I'm accessing this method using this parameter, because whenever I'm giving these parameters, it's the function is going to have two arguments, right? First is the URL, second is the parameters, right? And it's an object. So inside of an object, how do we get the data inside of an object? We use dot. Whenever we do dot inside of this parameter, we have method, and then we pull that method.
But method is an object of JavaScript. It's not like we created that object.
No, we can, no, basically not. You can have an array, you can have an object, you can put anything, you can literally pass anything. Instead of method, you want to say like add, like, or like you can say value, and you can give the value of 2. Here you can access that value as params.value, right? You can access this value. So method is what I give. It's just a name that I gave it to it because it's a get method, right?
Oh, okay, I see. All right.
Yeah. Oh, any more questions you guys have?
Yeah, I have a question. So on line number 15, what are we doing? Like request a send. What is that line doing on 15?
Okay, so what XML HTTP request is it basically it has an object that interacts with the server, right? So this one, it basically has an object. Let's say it has open object, it has open object, it has onload object, it has send object, it has on error object. Now, in order to access this object, uh, we are storing this on request, so we are doing the same thing like we did with method, right? We are doing params.method to access the object. So we are accessing these objects from request, and request stores the XML HTTP request, which is also an object.
Okay, so dot send dot one on error is
This
all
is
the
a
methods
function.
for.
Yeah, this is
Okay,
a function from that we get from
XML
XML
request.
HTTP request. Yes. So
Okay.
if we hover it, it initiates the request. It sends the request. It sends this data like the URL. This loads the data and stores the data. This sends the data. Like the reason why we are getting all of the value whenever we are going into that API is because of request.send. It's sending us in data. It's sending get data, get method data, right? If the request is get or head, the body argument provides the request body. Yeah. So these are all the methods. These are the functions which is stored as an object for XML HTTP request. And the way we, like, for example, we have const app equals to let's just go open on load on error. Then if we want to access open, we have to do app.open, right? Because it's an object. You have to do app.open. So that's the same thing that we are doing it here. Request.error dot, or you could have done this, same thing. But again, this brings all of the object. We don't need those objects. We don't need everything. We only need on open, on load. So that's why we're taking it from one single object. Did that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So I have one more question. So in this program, the first line that will get executed is number 19, right?
Yes, because it's a function, because we are calling this
It's
function
called,
here.
yeah, so yeah,
Right.
number 19, then it's going to go to number 1.
Yeah,
That
number
is going to be
19,
slow.
this is going to be the URL value because we are passing it at first. If we pass this at first, this is going to be the URL value, right?
Okay.
Because it's going to it's going to take a URL, and then first it's going to take a URL, and it's going to take the parameters. So this is the URL, and we pass the parameter as an object, and we get that object here. And dot then is once we have it resolved, we need to consume it. We need to consume the promise. That's why we have the response, whatever we get. And then in case if we have any errors, and then we just have this error handling that says we have an error. So 20 lines of code, you have a fetch API there. So everything is a promise. So one other thing I'd like to just briefly show you. I just want to show you how async and await is made. We are not going to make it. I'm just going to quickly do it and show you that everything is a promise, right? I'm going to make a TypeScript file. You guys don't need to understand it, but it's JavaScript. So here I'm going to write an async function called, let's say again, do something, right? And I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to have a response, and I'm going to wait, and I'm going to call fetch. Inside of fetch, I'm going to just say HTTPS. It can be anything. And I'm going to return that response, right? Now, this is TypeScript, so it's going to complain. So I need tsconfig. You don't need to understand it. I'll just show you the JavaScript. I'm going to compile it into JavaScript, and then I'm going to show you the code for async await. And then you'll be like, okay, everything is a promise. Yes, only 15, because that's ES6, right? Okay. Yes, so I'm going to compile it. Yes. Okay, now we have compiled it. So this is async. This is the code for async await. Now, when you look at here, everything is a promise. Here you see it's a promise. That is a function that takes resolve and reject. Now, every time it's gonna say fulfill, rejected, or like step. What are the steps? If it is done, resolve it. If it is not done, like adopt it. Then and then again we have then, and then we have fulfilled, rejected. So everything is inside of a promise. So the reason they made async await is because of the syntax. They want to make it look more fancy. They don't want to write like more resolve, reject, dot then, dot catch. So dot then is it basically replaces dot then. So that's async await. So inside of async await, it's a promise again. So that is that again. So do you guys have any questions on asynchronous JavaScript in general, or fetch, or anything?
Yeah, so you're saying that we can just write a fetch and await to place the promise
Yeah,
to.
so I'll do that here. 1 second. Let's do app.app3.js. And I'm going to take the same URL and I'm going to use fetch with async, right? Here I'm going to do is I'm going to write an async function. Function called again do something. And here I'm going to have a response, and I'm going to await fetch and have that URL. Now I need to consume that response into JSON format. And then I'm console log that data. And now I'm going to call that function. That's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of code. And then here, if we have app3.js, now if we see, it's giving me all the data, right? It's the same thing. Like if we use fetch instead of async await, if you use fetch dot then dot, like you can have multiple then, it's the same thing. But with async await, it just makes the code a little bit clean. That's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you use instead of async await, if you use fetch, you need to have let's see, response. I think we can get the data here, but let's see.
Hello guys, Nitish is having some network issues, so hello everyone, Nitish is having some network issue. We will wait for a minute.
Hello. Yeah, sorry.
Hi Nitish.
Oh my God. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Nitish.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, sorry, this is Xfinity for you. Okay. Where was I? Yeah, so I was basically saying this is we have data not defined because we are not consuming the fetch, right? So here, in order to consume it, we basically need to provide then method, and then we're gonna say, let's say data going to be data, right? Data is going to be data. So now, let's see, instead of here, let's console log the data. Log the data. So now we have the data, right? We have the response. Give me a second. We have a body. Okay, we are response to something. We are fetching it, and we are fetching the data, and we are directly placing the data. Okay. Yeah. So basically, await is await basically reduces this part. So if we have await is synced, then we can directly console log the response.json. That we do that and we get it. So it's a promise, right? The promise has an array of 10 data. So that's the difference between async await and promise. It's async await is just a promise. It's only like it's more clean. So like you don't have to write more syntax. That's the only difference, because then again you saw this async await uses promise everywhere. So if you guys have any questions.
So did you have to define params as a variable?
Here?
Yeah.
You
With a
don't. If
built-in.
for the built-in, you don't have to, because by built-in fetch will give you the get method. Built-in, it's going to give you the built-in method. You don't need to define. It's because we are creating our own fetch API. That's why we are defining that this is a get request. This is not a post request or a put request. And when you have a put request, it means writing in the database, right? We are not writing in the database. We are only fetching. So for fetching, we use get, right? Yeah. So yeah, how much time do we have? I think we can do a small project. It's going to be real quick. I'm going to open Code Sandbox, and we are going to basically fetch some data, use React, create React. Oh no, this is Node. React. Okay. Okay, so we are going to use the same API, but we are going to use it with hooks. Did you guys study hooks or not yet?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Okay. That's fine. I'll just show you. It's going to be really easy. We're going to use fetch, but we are going to do this in React, right? So here, let's just remove this part. Okay, and this is going to be a class name. So this is like one of the most asked interview questions. They basically give you an API and they tell you like, hey, render this many data on the page, or like create a button or an input, and whenever I enter the ID of that, for example, if I enter the ID, I'm only going to get this data. I'm not going to get everything. So that kind of questions is what they asked during the interview. So that is something that we're going to do, and we're going to use fetch and promise, right? So here we basically want to get a user. So this say we have an ID, name, username, email, address. So it's an object. It's an object. And we have so many data. So let's first basically write a code. Let's see. Okay, we're gonna say a user and set user. So this is called hooks, right? Hooks is nothing. It's same as like an object. For example, it's a function. Hooks means basically they are a function, right? So UseState is a function that is provided by React, right? So it's a function that is used to store a data, initial data, and then that is going to update a data. So right now I have empty. So if I print user, it's going to create empty. If I have this as hi, and then I print here user instead of an object, then I get a hi, right? So this is like initial value. So here currently I want it to be empty because we are going to pull that data from the API using fetch. So whenever we do any network request on React, we use effect. It's also a function, same as UseState, but what use effect does, it's going to render your DOM. DOM means this based on whatever data you provide. Or for example, whenever you are making a network request, you don't want to make the network request constantly, right? You want to make it like maybe one time, or maybe whenever your ID changed, or maybe like on a specific time, right? So use effect helps us do that, right? Okay, and then here we are going to use fetch, right? And fetch, I'm going to give the URL, and the syntax is again the same. Either it's React, it's JavaScript, Vue, Angular, anywhere. The syntax is going to be the same for a promise. So then I'm going to have a response, and I'm going to store that response as a JSON object. And we can, I told you before that we can have multiple then. So I'm going to do another then, and I'm going to have it as a set user. So what happened here was, first it got the response, it got the data, and then now it's setting that data here. So my user was initially empty. When it comes here, my user is, this is going to set my user data to whatever data I get from the API, right? And then we have this called empty array, where we basically provide nothing because we want to make a network request once. For example, if we want to make a network request multiple times, for example, if we have an ID, we can give them an ID. That means whenever the ID changes, our page is going to refresh, right? Okay. So let's log the user. So what do we get? We get an object, right? An object is all the data, right? From object 1, we have this data. Now, when you go to the API, it's this data. So we are getting that request back. And this is how you make a network request on React. So whenever you use fetch or Axios or anything, whenever you use an API, you write it inside of use effect. So we have user. We can display that user here, but it's not going to be displayed because it's an object, right? We need to use an array. So for that, because it's an object, we can map through an object. You guys know about the map function, right? Map. What it does is it goes, it's like a loop. It goes through each and everything, right? So whenever we run it, it goes through, it's an array of 2, 8, 4, 6, because it's multiplied and it's putting it in map 1. So we are going to map it, and then we are going to basically display the data. What we are going to do here is user dot map, and it's going to be let's say data, and data, and data is going to be mapping. It's a list, so we want user dot name. Maybe it's a list. Here. Okay. Okay, user.map is not a function. So what happened? In the app component. So let's see. This debug, we have use effect, we got the data, and it's returning a div. And we are basically trying to map it. Okay. Let's try const new user would be users dot splice. We just want 5 users. And let's use new user. Oh, should be data.name. Users.splice to SPLIC splice is this. Let's use user again. Oh, weird. 1 second. Type of error occurred. 2541. Consider adding an error boundary. Problems. Okay, it's not a function. Why is it not a function? This comes to the user. And see. Okay, user is empty. Currently, user is empty. Set user. Okay. We are calling set user, but we are not setting. Is it? Still not. It's weird. Okay, I see. I see. We have a JSON, we have set users, but we are not. There's some method called stringify. We need to stringify here. Let's just say return JSON dots, because we are getting a JSON data, right? Respond.json, it's a JSON object. So we need to stringify it. Yes. So that's the data. Whenever you use fetch, you can always use JSON.stringify right here and then use it as a response. And it is still going to give you the same data. I see. Okay. User. No. Yeah, so basically, we need to stringify the data that we received. That's why, because we are receiving an object. So the object needs to be in a string because dev is not going to, this is basically GSX, right? HTML is not going to know what is this. So we are basically making it as a string and displaying it here. So you have like ID, everything, all of the data just thrown in here, like, because we are directly printing the user after setting the user. So that's how basically you use fetch in React, like whenever you make a network request.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain use effect and use state one more time?
Yeah, so these are nothing more than just a function, right? So use state is a function that is used to update the state of your application. Like, for example, here we are basically setting a user, right? The user is the thing that is changing or that we are getting. So we are initially we are setting is an empty array because like we are gonna pull it from the API, and then we are gonna setting that user using another function from use state. So this doesn't have to be user always. It can be A or it can be like A or B, right? And then A is going to store the initial value and B is going to update that A value. So this updates this value and this is going to be the initial value. So that's everything that use state does, nothing else, nothing more, right? That's everything that use state does. It's just a function. What use effect does is
So user is that empty array essentially that we have in the beginning, and then set
Yes.
user is another function to update the user and just add it to that array.
Right. So here you can say let user is empty array, right? And then later down the road, you go and you update that user, right? For example, user equals to like new user or something, you update that user. So this function is basically, this is what use state does. It gives us an initial value, and then it gives us a function to update that value. That's use state.
So then, and then in this code, we're using use state with set user to update the user values.
Right. If we console log user here, we get an empty console log. User, because it's updating, it has updated that user with this code. So if we don't do it, it should be empty. Let's see. If we don't set the user initially, it's going to be empty.
Okay.
It's like the initial value, and then this is like the updating value. So that's use state. Use effect is a function where you can run multiple functions inside of it that is going to change your UI. For example, you have a form, right? And then you write all of the things. Now, when you press send, it has to update the UI, right? It's going to say send. So that updating those kind of things is basically handled by use effect, not the UI, but the function. For example, here we are fetching it, and then we are setting it, right? So that is handled by use effect. Because if we don't set it inside of a use effect, it's not going to update in the DOM. So that is why we use React. It helps us update those value based on our need. For example, here, if we wanted to change, let's say based on ID, let's do another. Okay, let's clean this up and do another one, which is where we are going to change based on ID, right? So let's say ID, set ID. You can write anything, like whatever makes you feel easier, right? For use state. Use state, let's say initially we just want an ID. Initial value is going to be 1. And then let's have a button. And for a button, we are going to say ID from button and set ID from button. And initially, it's also going to be 1. So these are just variables. Yeah, you can just know it as variables. So initial value for ID from button is 1. So whenever I use set ID, it's going to update the value of ID from button. So that's how use state works. So now we have this. Now what we want to do is we want to render it based on ID from button. And here we are going to have, instead of that, let's have an input type text value. It's going to be ID. And on change is going to be, I'll explain this in a bit. With ID, target value. And this is going to be the input and button. I'm clicking the button. We want to set ID from button to the ID. And this is going to be like fetch user button, right? Now, and here we wanna fetch user.name, right? So here, what happened was, I'll show you when I fetch one user, it's not fetching the data. Okay, we are not setting that data. Let's call here response. We set user response.data. And let's catch the error. Catch error is log error. Okay. Set user response to data. What else is missing? Comma. Okay. User.name. Reading name is undefined. Do we have name? Yeah, we do have name. Give me a second. It should have updated it, but okay, yeah, I see. What's the problem? Okay, we need an ID. So once we have an ID, in order to get this, we can say user1. Okay, user.1. ID.button is missing dependency ID. It's going to depend on ID. Okay. We have response. We got the response. Fetch. Okay. Set user response.json. Yeah, response.json. Okay, 1 sec. Um, okay, that's out of scope. One change is this. Okay, fetch users. We have a button.
Hello.
Huh. Yes.
I think
Yeah,
the
we
user is still an empty object. So on line 12, I think you need to
Right.
set user equals to like, and then function that leads to set user.
One second. So this can set button user response. Response is not defined.
No. I think like
Yes, there you go.
response
There you
dot
go.
json dot then. Oh,
Yeah, there you go. Okay, there you go. So just put it on a new line. Okay, so here now what you see is whenever we have an ID that's updated, see, it's updating the UI, right? It's changing it. The reason it's changing is because our ID is dependent on the data. So what use effect does is it updates this UI whenever these thing changes. So if we have this empty, it doesn't change. See, because it's not going to update it. That's why whenever we have ID, both ID, and then now whenever we type in ID, it's going to change it. So that's what use effect is used for. Do you guys have any questions on this?
In line 13, instead of set user, if you just had user, will it give you an
Yes.
error?
User, yeah, because we are not setting a user, so it's going to be an empty array, right? It's still going to be empty because we are not setting this. We are hitting the API, we are getting the data, but we are not setting the user. So whenever you use use state, the second variable is used to update the data of the first variable. Whenever you use that user, it's going to update it.
So in this case, we don't need to, what is it? Use user. All we needed to do is update the value every time.
Yes,
Okay.
because we are using this user to display the username, right? So this is
Okay. So set user is used to update the value, and then user is used to print the name.
Yes, you are not
Okay.
here. If you do set user.name, it's not going to see bound dispatch set state. It's an error.
Okay.
So the first variable is always going to be the variable that the data is going to be stored in, but the second variable is going to be it's a function.
Update.
Yeah, it's going to update this. So
Okay.
in general, JavaScript, you would say a is equals to, like, let's say a equals to 10, and you go down, and whenever you want to update a, you say like a plus equals to 1. So a is going to be updated, a is going to be 11, right? So that's how you update it. But in React, you use state because set user is going to update it.
Got it. Thank you.
So if you guys have any other questions, it's basically we're using a promise. We are making an API request, and then we are manipulating that data. So if you guys want me to describe a little bit on what's happening here, just let me know. But the main thing to focus is, I think, just this part, which is like, okay, use state, it's basically updating and storing the value. And then use effect is whenever you make an API request, or whenever you have any UI that needs to be updated based on different kind of data. In this case, ID. For example, you might have a table with, let's say, 200 data, right? Now you want to paginate it, right? You want to go next. You want to show 10 data on each page. Then you need to store that is a dependency here, so it's going to update it. You are going to store 10 data, you are going to do the UI part, you are going to write HTML, CSS, that's fine. But in React, if you want to update the UI, you use effect, because the data is going to be updated based on this ID, right? Based on this. Right now, if I do 6, the data is updated. That means the UI is updated. So that's what use effect does. So if you guys have any questions, let me know.
So use effect updates the UI, and then use state is just used to update the data.
Right. Use state is you initialize the data and you update that data.
Okay. Can you explain where is it? Line 12, the response.json part?
Yes. So whenever we are getting, let's just go with this. Okay, we are getting this number 1, right? It's giving us this object, right? Now we need to specify what kind of object it is. The response is going to be a JSON object. So that's what we are specifying it. But if you use any other third party like Axios, instead of fetch, if you use Axios, you are going to have, like, it's going to be, instead of JSON, it's going to be data, because it's a data. So, but in general, it's going to be a JSON object. It's a JavaScript object notation. So.
Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then is those 3 lines like the resolve and like the reject part? Because then you had the response.json, and then line 14.catch is used if there's an error.
This is the we are currently using the promise of fetch, inbuilt fetch. So what we can do, is, like, we have this promise, right? We can directly import it here instead of using fetch. Let's just say, let's just create another function. Let's say this instead of this, instead of fetch. Let's say my fetch, right? Is it going to be the same thing? Yes. It's still 1 second. Cannot read properties. We are getting the ID response. What else? Oh, it needs a request. What kind of request we are making? Right. Get. Oh, it needs a method. We are passing a method. So that's going to be method. It's going to be get. Now if you do this, to undefined. Let's see. Response.json is not a function. Okay. We are fetching the data. How did we fetch it? We directly console log the response. Simplify. No, this one was simplify. Response. Can I do this? Let's see. Still okay. Yeah, response is not a function. Why is it not a function? Let's see. My fetch, it's taking the URL method. Let's copy this. Instead of this, just like this. Now this is going to be my fetch method. It is printing, but we need to set that then. Response data, I think. No, JSON. Yeah, there might be something else, but I'm completely not sure. I know that if we use Axios, we do data. Here, they might have something else. We can directly print it on the console, but the fetch API might have something else made for the response. Because here we are directly getting everything from the API, but we don't have the JSON, what do you call it, object. Yeah.
I'm saying that you are having issue with saving the file
Really?
app.js.
I don't think so. Or fail to save. Unknown retry. Saved. Yeah, technically, like it's the similar thing. Whatever the fetch API uses, similar thing, we can do it like as we did, or fetch 2, 1, 2. Now it's updated. 4, 5. Yeah, I'm not sure on this one. I might look into this further, but yeah. Yeah, basically that's pretty much it on promise. Like that's how you like create a promise, that's how you consume a promise, that's how you use other API and that uses a promise. Yeah. Now like you guys can you guys are able to like do any sorts of projects on this, because like it's everything is HTML or CSS. All you need to do is just place the data, right? Where do you want the data to be? We could also use, like, for example, GitHub API, pull up user data, and then maybe create a search feature, and then like they write in name, and then they can search a user. That's possible. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Do you guys have any other questions? No questions? Do you guys want me to share this? Do you guys want to like add the link? I can share it on the group.
Is this application similar to Replit?
Replit?
Yeah.
Yeah, Code Sandbox. We basically, it's mostly famous for React projects. But yeah, it's similar to Replit. It's easier because you can add any dependency here. You have a view, you have consoles, and you write your code here. So similar to Replit. I've sent the link to this. You can access this if you guys want to play around with it. Just explore what other things that you can do. Like you can not just username, you can say user dot what else data do you have? Address, email. So address, you can say user dot email, and you have a user dot email, right? Now, in order to get an address, if you say user dot user dot address dot, what address do we have? Street. You get a street address. So you can basically create a project with it, like maybe change some UI, make it look a little bit pretty, or you guys can play around with it. Cool. Do you guys have any other questions? Anything, not just related to this, anything else in general? No questions? Cool.
Like we learned about fetching data, right?
Uh-huh.
So later on, we will also learn how to put the data to the database.
Yes, I think
So
so.
my question is, like before the React library, we used to just do front-end development like HTML, CSS, and normal jQuery implementations, right? So, what's the use of the backend developer here at the moment?
At the moment?
Yeah, because we are handling the backend
So
development
you
as
see,
well.
we are already using our data, right? Somebody
Yeah.
else has to create this data. We are currently using an endpoint. So for example, if it's a company, they're going to have their own database. They are going the database, the data in their there are logics around how are we going to use that data and how scalable it's going to be. Those kind of things. For example, my company, we use a lot of GraphQL endpoints. This is REST API, right? We have GET request, POST request. I work with GraphQL, and GraphQL is like no matter how many users use it, it's going to only give you certain data from an endpoint. For example, if I want the street of this from an REST API, I have to get access to this whole object and arrays, right? I have to get access to everything, and then I'm going to only pick this to get this data. So that's what REST API is. It gives you an endpoint. So backend developers makes those architectures, make those decisions, and all of the logics that goes behind it. Like mostly at my work, whenever we have any kind of data coming in from backend, for example, let's say user, there are thousands of users. Now, which user is going to, like, after user logs in, like, what are they going to see? Of course, front end is going to make what are they going to see, but the data is coming from the backend. So that's where backend usually comes in. Right now, we have this dummy API. That's why we have this dummy data and everything, right? So that's where you communicate. That's where we communicate with backend developers. Like whenever we create a new feature, whenever we are working on something, the backend developer creates the database first, write all the logics, make the endpoints and everything, and then we consume it on the front end.
Okay.
Right now, like we are not manipulating any data, right? We are only consuming data. That's what we are doing. We are fetching all the data, and then we are manipulating the data that we have already fetched from the backend.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to like DM me or like ask any questions if you guys have anything after the session as well. I don't mind messages, so feel free. Cool. Yeah, I think what time are we done with the session?
It's 11, Nitish.
Okay, got it. All right. That's everything then. If you guys have any questions, concerns, like just reach out to me. I'd be happy to help. Yeah. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nitish.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Nitish.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.